Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. We talk everything animation here, including Final Space, which we'll be getting into right now. I'm Dylan Hysen, and today I'm joined by Alex Bonilla.
Chukity.
Mel Moyer.
Hello.
And John McKenna.
Hi, everybody.
Today we're talking Final Space, Chapter 8, that just went up online this week. Chapter 8 of Final Space, big episode, a lot to get into. We've talked about Final Space every week here at the Overly Animated Podcast. Find us at overlyanimated.com. Search for Overly Animated Final Space. Subscribe to us on YouTube or iTunes to not miss our future Final Space coverage. Check out our previous Final Space podcast. Get caught up. But yeah, we'll be recapping this pretty big Chapter 8. Make sure you've seen this episode. Spoilers for this episode and all previous episodes of Final Space. But let's talk this, I would say, a nuts episode here.
Nuts.
Yeah.
Aren't they all?
Costume changes.
I think this in particular, costume changes. Yeah, we'll get into all the costume changes. I think this episode in particular, kind of most nuts of the series. Do you agree, Alex? And what did you think of this one?
I mean, it's weird because I think that this was a fairly light episode in terms of humor. Like, I didn't really catch that many jokes that stood out compared to previous episodes. But at the same time, like, the sequences themselves are just like, okay, we're going there. Like, we're finally getting Gary and his dad interacting. We're getting alternate timeline stuff. The reveal at the end about the Lord Commander. Like, I feel like I say a lot, it's just throwing a lot of stuff at you all at once, this show. And we did it again in this episode. I think it was fairly entertaining, but like in terms of like watching the plot roll out. But I do think that if you're watching this for the humor side of it, it's a little on the lesser side of what the show has been capable of in the past. So like in the end, I'm like, this is a great episode of television, but like for Final Space, it's like middle of the pack.
Mel, what did you think of Chapter 8?
When I was watching it, I remembered what, like Olin Rogers said about like, around episode 6 is when it really like gets real. Just wait till episode 6. I felt like this one was more where there was a turn in everything that was going on, and maybe even episode 7. It was a lot thrown at you at once, but I love the way that they did it with, this brain thing and the flaming M&M, and then like, Gary went in by himself. And of course, for, the dramatic effect, everyone else had to be watching the scene from where they were. Like, I enjoyed all of that. It was a lot, but I think the way they did certain stuff, like, it paced it. Like, the Gary's dad stuff was obviously the biggest aspect here, but, like, throwing in there, Jack the co-pilot at the end, like, was just... it was so small and quick that I felt it didn't feel like I was getting like information dumped on me. I do think that this is one of those episodes though that it's like they really like have been towing the line between like, okay, where does the comedy end and the seriousness starts? And for the most part, the distinction's been, clear and it's kind of blended well, but this is one where it was like, okay, like this was a very all serious exposition episode and there wasn't a ton of funny besides just the overall quirky theme of the show. And I don't know, I feel like at some point that whole like, line that they're walking with like funny versus dramatic is going to like tip one way or the other or just like fall apart. I don't know if they've like well defined the tone where that's concerned yet.
Yeah, that could have been this episode where it goes towards the serious for the rest of the show, which is only 2 more episodes after this, but yeah. Okay, John, what did you think?
I agree with Alex. This definitely wasn't really a high point humor wise for the show, and I did notice a bit of a disconnect between the serious plot elements and the humorous aspects. It just felt a little more off, and they've integrated it a lot better elsewhere in the series. Having said that, the plot elements itself were very interesting. I like the use of time travel here. I used the alternate dimension. It was just it was still controlled. Like I understood it going through. Getting to meet Gary's father was very interesting, and the we know a little bit now about Mooncake's backstory, which is kind of interesting and also very almost I don't know how to best describe it. It was like a sort of anticlimactic yet still climactic ending. Because it's this big boom, and all of a sudden it shrinks, and then you just
I see what you're saying.
Buzz away. So it's like, well, that was a thing. But yeah, it was. But I liked it. It raises a whole lot of questions about Lord Commander, and they have 2 episodes to answer that for him. So, yep, we're in the home stretch, and it should be pretty interesting to see where this plays out.
Yeah, definitely. At the very least, definitely makes for very interesting setup to the last 2 episodes. I agree that the humor isn't there in this episode. I just don't care. I want this to be a dramatic show. Like this episode, if all episodes of Final Space were like this one, this show would be a drama and not a comedy. And, previous episodes, it's kind of like a comedy number 1, drama number 2. We've been tilting the scales this whole time. What do I care if if this episode isn't as funny? If the plot stuff is really great, and I think it is pretty good in this episode. I'm not like super in love. I guess my ultimate reaction is I'm not super in love with everything that happened. My first reaction was, like, this is fucking nuts what's happening in this episode. When I watched it the first time and we're hopping through all of the different brain chambers, I'm like, what the fuck is happening right now? This is visually stunning. One of the most visually ambitious episodes of animation in recent memory. I'll say that. And, it's like, I think it ends up being more visually ambitious than narratively ambitious. I don't think it ultimately ends up doing anything that special narratively, which is maybe what makes me think this isn't the best episode of the show or something, but it's still like very good. And I think there's a lot of really cool stuff that happens. We're not getting into the things I thought we'd be getting into, which were different timelines. We're staying on the same timeline. I'm open to not doing that, but
So here's my question about that. So, like, does that mean Nightfall's timeline doesn't exist anymore because it didn't happen? Like,
right. Well, I don't think there's a clear answer to that in time travel theory. There's different things. I don't know what the show is subscribing to. I think we could potentially go back there in theory, but we just haven't yet. Nightfall is pretty interesting herself, and she leaves at the end and what's happening with her. We go into the interdimension, but we're staying on Gary's timeline, although Gary's dad is on a different timeline. So I guess that is a different timeline. It's very confusing.
And there's also that scene where there's just all the different Garys. It's like, is that alternate dimensions? Is that made up? Or what's
I believe that is alternate dimensions. Yeah. So I think at least we glimpsed them. But I guess I loved it. I loved the episode. Visually ambitious. I love that they're going for it. I would love a little bit of more narrative complexity. I don't think anything they did really got there for me. But your mileage may vary on that. The Lord Commander twist, that I think that almost did. There's some stuff that almost did, but yeah, let's break down a bunch of this huge plot stuff that happens at the end. I mean, I guess we got to kind of conceptually start with the fact that 80% of this episode took place inside the brain of a giant space beast that we didn't even know about until last episode.
Yeah, inside a Titan who previous to this we've got like 10 seconds explanation last time.
Yeah.
10, more like 5.
Yeah, last podcast I said we'll never see the Titans again, and I'm going to still stick with that in that we're not going to see them in come out of Final Space, but we'll see. But we do, they're more involved than I thought they'd be. It's kind of
and so this is not Final Space, this is Inner Space, which is separate from Outer Space, but not Final Space either, right?
I didn't even think of Outer Space. That's funny.
So I guess, so what is it like? There's Outer Space, Inner Space, Final
Space? It's interspace. Yeah. With a T. So it's different than Final Space, and it's between dimensions. Yeah. And that's where Bolo is imprisoned, and we go inside Bolo's mind. Just conceptually, Alex, what did you think of the approach to this episode?
I mean, that was like some Rick and Morty weirdness stuff. Like,
oh my god.
That shot, where I think where the commercial break happens, and they just like are in front of this giant face with like a bunch of eyes, like that shot alone was impressive enough. And then like to go inside, and as you mentioned, like the whole shifting into different brain chambers, and we get the whole like trippy sequences that we've seen in previous episodes, but like here, I think they go even more all out with it. It's just all very, very trippy and like adult swimmy in a way. Just watching it all happen.
Yeah, I actually really liked the trippiness. I guess that's maybe the box standard way of dealing with going into parallel dimensions. Like you have to up the LSD content of the episode, or maybe not LSD. This was more like just getting high on marijuana and
space.
And yes, high on space. But I think it really worked, and it was very. I loved it, and yeah, the visuals were really good. That actually did help the episode out a lot, and it made sense. It wasn't just there for show. It really made it a more immersive episode for having done that.
Yeah, I think normally I don't like trippy sequences. I've kind of come out against those in Rick and Morty and BoJack. This to me isn't your standard trippy sequence like we saw in that one episode of Rick and Morty.
Well, see, the thing is that one Rick and Morty episode, at the end, you don't really get what the purpose of it really was. At least here, like, it's serving a purpose of demonstrating transporting through the mind of a celestial being. Like, that's understandable enough.
Exactly. That's exactly my point.
I'm willing to buy the trippiness of that.
Yeah. This has narrative foundation. Like, normally trippy sequences are used to just do, whoa, what's happening? This, I understand what's happening, and it's just visually stunning. Like, that I'm totally on board with. So I really love them in this episode. Yeah, Mel, do you think, do you agree this episode's made, ambitious? In what ways, did that stand out to you, I guess?
Just, like, that entire, like, every time they switched, what was it? Like, we're only on the third level, the third brain chamber or something like that, and then they got farther and farther, and then his eyes started bleeding, and all sorts of crazy stuff happened. It's weird because when I first saw that flaming M&M thing, it kind of took me out of it for a second because I was like, that's weird looking and kind of like almost minimalistic compared to the other designs. Like it felt like, like super simplistic in its design. Mm-hmm. But I liked his character enough that I was willing to overlook it when he was smacking people with his stick. No, the whole thing was like just, and I felt that way even too in other episodes when they were going through like, like that vortex place thing where they couldn't touch the lasers or whatever it was. Like, I feel like with this show, like they've done really trippy stuff with their locations in space. And they've been like, it's not just planets and stars. It's, here's some super, Wrinkle in Time-ish type locations to peruse. So I just thought that entire sequence inside the brain before they get to, Gary's flashbacks and that sort of thing, just like the setting of it all was just really, it was super duper colorful and looked super duper expensive.
Yeah.
So I was into it.
Yeah, before we arrive at Bolo's Mind Palace, the last one we go to.
Is it called a Mind Palace, or are you calling it that?
No, it's we said it in the show. It's the last brain chamber.
I can't tell who's serious anymore with the Mind Palace thing, so
yeah, no,
I
they
have
say
to check
that.
sometimes.
They say that. Yeah, I think that brain chamber hopping sequence really does stand out, even though it doesn't really have anything to do with anything narratively. Just it's probably the most visually stunning sequence of the show. It's usually sequences not grounded in a plot thing or don't jump out that much, but I'm gonna remember that one for sure looking back on the show. But let's talk some of these consequential plot developments. I guess since we already talked about the Titans, we can go through what more we learn of them in this episode, which isn't a ton. But Nightfall says that basically, I think the reveal is that Nightfall is able to time travel because Bolo gave her a time traveling vehicle or told her how to build it. It's not, there's no more details given than that, but that does explain how Nightfall got her ship. Like Bolo came to Nightfall at her lowest points, and then they teamed up.
So did Bolo break out of prison in this other timeline, or how?
I believe Bolo is able to communicate despite being imprisoned. There's two. Yeah, either because we saw that Bolo can communicate them and suck them into his mind, even though he's imprisoned in this timeline. So it stands to reason potentially he can communicate through the moon with Nightfall.
Through the moon.
Yeah, whatever moon that was.
Yeah, that part was weird.
Yeah.
This giant moon just moving towards her. Hey.
Yeah, I don't know how. I don't know. Yeah, it was a very visually interesting way to demonstrate that. But I don't know how different timelines work with Titans. Whether there's different versions of Titans, whether they're the same throughout all the. But whatever. Either way, Bolo is able to communicate. Nightfall narrates that the Titans are creatures that poison the universe with chaos. They're each in charge of a different realm. This, to me, which it felt very Steven Universe with the diamonds, them each having their own planets. Like these are these giant space creatures, all powerful, that are in charge of different parts of the world.
Or different dimensions.
Does this mean Bolo is rose quartz?
I think so. I think that's what that means.
If only I understood these references.
Yeah, you and half the people listening. But Bolo sealed off our dimension from final space and was imprisoned because of that. So presumably the rest of the universe or the rest of the dimensions are in chaos right now because of the Titans, but only the one that Gary is in is held up because Bolo sealed it off. Agree?
So it's like a pocket universe?
Maybe created that, but Bolo protected their dimension basically. I think
it's like
their particular timeline. The timelines and dimensions interchange.
Yeah, not clear what dimension means in the show, to be honest.
What does anything mean anymore?
It sounds like this. What this means is everything except except the universe we exist in has gone to shit.
Yeah, essentially. But is it a universe? Is dimension a measure of space or time?
It's like the multiverse theory, but it's like, is it okay? So it's like, do we consider is it timelines even though it's parallel, or is it just is it?
I think,
also they use the word realm, which is neither dimension nor timeline.
That's not a scientific term.
Yeah, that's sometimes that's used as a synonym for dimension, and I don't think it's going to matter. I think the point of saying this is that it establishes the Titans as this all-powerful threat, while also explaining why they're not currently affecting us. Basically, it's like it's Bolo saved us, but otherwise everything would be doomed. And maybe that's still a threat to come in the last two episodes, although I don't know. So, these Titans really came out of nowhere these last two episodes. Now a major part of the show.
Yeah.
Now, connecting that to the other reveal, why are we trying to open final space then? Like, is there any other ulterior motive?
Jack the
Okay, we need to talk about Lord Commander first to get to that. So
his name is Jack the co-pilot.
Yeah, his name is Jack. He is the co-pilot. So this is potentially the biggest plot reveal. We've been saying there's gonna be some sort of reveal of Lord Commander. That's the most obvious thing to do with the way the show is set up. So it is revealed he was Gary's dad's former co-pilot.
I mean, we were close with saying Gary is Lord Commander.
We said Gary was Lord Commander. We said Gary's dad. Yeah,
we're off by 2 degrees of separation.
Yeah,
I thought that was a weirdly specific time, but he's known him for 29 years.
Yes, he has. Mel, you said this reveal particularly got you. What did you like about this?
Just because, like, when it's funny because it's like I was sitting there watching it, and he turned. He was like my co-pilot. And as soon as I saw the back of his head, I was like, oh. And then I was mad at myself for being so responsive to it. At which point I texted you to be like, "Oh, that got me."
That's good. That's what we want from these shows.
Yeah, no, literally. And it was like thinking back on it, I was like, "Oh, that was stupid." Like it wasn't that big of a thing, but I was just like, "Oh, it's him." So,
yeah, it's him.
But no, it was good. I liked it, and I liked the little. I mean, I guess I don't completely understand. I mean, I get it. He got infected with final space, whatever. But it was, and then they beat the crap out of him while he was stuck in frozen time. So he woke up and he was like, "Oh my God." And then,
Yeah, that's the one thing that kind of, that I didn't think was all that funny. It was like, why would Gary's dad, who, again, this guy's his co-pilot for 29 years, just all of a sudden agree to beat the shit out of him?
He says, he's my friend for 29 years, but I'll take your word for it.
Really? I mean, I guess now we know why Lord Commander looks the way he does, but also at the same time, it's like, why would you allow that?
Blind devotion to your son.
That you hadn't seen in... No, I was about to say I hadn't seen...
In about 15 minutes.
Yeah, he saw him 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, John, what was your reaction to this twist with him being the co-pilot?
I'm still I don't know. I don't know. It's like, because it's like, okay, he's a co-pilot, so that's Lord Commander. How did we get from co-pilot infected by final space to head of a massive empire? And how does the time work for that to have happened? It's
climbing the corporate ladder.
like,
yeah.
That's a pretty quick climbing of the corporate ladder.
I guess it makes sense since Lord Commander controls the Infinity Guard. He was a member of the Infinity Guard.
Yeah.
That is true. But at the same time, it's like, how many years would that have to take place? And if it took that many years, what dimension did he have to go into to get to those years? And then all that, it's like, I'm like,
And that's what episode 9 is for.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, it's like, it's tough. Like, it's a good reveal. It's an interesting reveal. But at the same time, it's, wait.
So your reaction was mainly confusion.
Yeah, like
okay.
one of those like, this is gonna bother me until I see episode 9.
Yeah,
the logistics came crashing down.
Yeah, you could argue that applies to potentially a lot of things in this episode, but we'll break it down. Alex, what was your reaction to this?
I was impressed. It was a thing that, like, we've been thinking about, like, what is Lord Commander's deal? Like, why is he like this? And it came up with stuff that we would never have thought to think about, which, at least to me, is like, okay, cool. Like, and I did see, like, the big head while they were talking, and I was like, wait, did he, like, invade this memory somehow? Or something weird going on?
Yeah.
But then it turns out to just be him. I was like, oh, okay, he was normal once upon a time. Cool. It still raises the question of, like, why does he want to get to final space? Like, is it just a thing where he's infected and that's just, like, his instinct? Like, his final space part wants to be one with the other dimension or something? Or is there another ulterior motive for, like, perhaps revenge of some kind for whatever happened before that we don't know about? That still needs to be resolved, but giving Lord Commander an identity connected to Gary is important to show that Gary is important. This episode in particular is confirming that the reason Gary is important is specifically because of his dad being somehow connected to the final space stuff. So throwing Lord Commander into that very tight-knit loop is also a important thing to do to give emotional stakes later on. So I'm interested to see what happens. In that moment, I was impressed. But yeah, if you think about it a bit more, you're like, well, we still got a couple more questions to get through.
Yeah. First of all, when I saw this, I was with Alex. I saw the back of his head and was like, okay, that's Lord Commander. Why is he there in his ship? I didn't think like he was there out of place. I just thought, oh, okay, this is coming up, the twist. Like I felt like it kind of gave it away. But I was happy that we're getting a Lord Commander twist because that was towards the top of my list of things we needed to do with the last few episodes. Like this is just such an obvious thing we needed to do. Have some sort of reveal with him. But after that, I was underwhelmed because, I'm like, he's just the co-pilot. That's it. This isn't a person who I knew existed before. So it's not really a twist on a character that we know. It's just that, okay, the twist is he was connected to Gary's dad. And that didn't really do anything for me.
For 29 years.
Yeah. Which, there's potential there and there being more to it than this, but, it didn't immediately do anything to me. Then he gets infected, then they beat him up. And I'm like, okay, is this a weird thing where they cause Lord Commander to be the way he is because they beat him up by going back in time and they're beating him up because he's Lord Commander? So it's a cyclical time loop. And then
I'm praying that's not the answer.
Well, it kind of happens, but then he's infected with final space. It's like, okay, that's primarily the reason why this is happening. But the added complication is that all of this is probably taking place on a different timeline. So I don't really understand how that makes us arrive at our current timeline with our current Lord Commander the way he is right now.
Now, are we sure about that? Is it possible
that was my next question. Yeah,
that has Nightfall done this to every time she's gone back successfully convincing Gary that, okay, we got to take you to Bolo, we got to take you back to where it started, so that way you can learn this information, then you do with the information what you will.
Well, okay, so I think that is possible that she's done this multiple times and failed. I think that's possible. But I think the thing for me that signifies that this is not our timeline is because he's closing the rift at the end. He does. He closes the whatever we're calling this, the thing in space, the rift in space. He puts the antimatter bomb in, and it seals back up, and Mooncake is created. And Lord Commander gets infected because the breach in space is closed. And in our timeline, the breach is still active. So that's the thing that says, okay, this is not the present.
Well, no, I don't think that's true. I think that there was a breach before he closed it, and this Infinity Guard is reopening the breach. I think that's what's going on. So it can still be the same timeline and just have the breach happen twice.
I need a chart and a poster and a visual aid.
Yeah. Break out the It's Always Sunny meme.
Yeah, because I never got the impression that this was separate. I thought like this is showing you like this is how we did it last time. This is how you can do it again.
The thing that made it separate for me is that it closes. But I guess if they're reopening it currently, which is, I guess they would have said this in episode 5 or something around then.
Yeah, because like they mentioned, like we got this formula from you, Quinn. This is how we learned how to do it. So, like that.
Well, I think Quinn was theoretically solving it. I don't think that had to do with anything, but.
Maybe, but I know they used it as some kind of justification. But the point is, like, we don't know how the first breach happened, but we definitely know that the second breach is happening because they're opening it.
I mean, it's possible I'm not remembering something, but if this is seen as another breach, then this could just be on our current timeline. There's the added complication of this is the timeline that what you're saying, Nightfall comes back in, which in some time the timeline theories makes this branch off into a separate one. I don't know.
But is Nightfall from a separate timeline or just from the same timeline, just flashing forward and then coming back?
Right, because Nightfall says that Bolo gave her a machine to traverse time, not necessarily timelines, although going back in time creates timelines, different timelines.
Yeah. But I thought, isn't that just going back on the same timeline and tilting it in a different way?
No, because if you change what happened, you've created a new time. Like from that point on is a new. Think of it like a fork. You've added a new prong, so that's like a new timeline.
Yeah, there's a million theories for this, so it's not like it's not like this is definitively anything yet.
This is I'm gonna make a long post about all the spacey timing.
It's like what rules are we going by? Are we going by Doctor Who rules? Are we going by Hitchhiker's Guide rules? Are we going by Rick and Morty rules? I don't know.
Well, the fact that they can't even settle on whether it's a dimension or a timeline is not super looking good for picking one specific theory here.
Well, dimension could mean both time and space.
So, like, usually it does, right? So usually, like, if we're talking about like legitimate theories of like not time travel, because that's like, as far as we know, that's like not a thing that can happen, but like multiple universes are a thing. The thing that separates them is that like decision points. So like you turn left instead of turning right, and now there's two different time. And you're right, it is space time. It's one thing. There's like two different things happening like right beside each other, but happening completely differently, but you're constantly creating them every time you make a decision.
Yeah.
So like, how can this be the only universe that's protected from the Titans if things like this are possible?
Yeah. The Titans relating to timelines doesn't make sense to me, but it's I think the important thing is that the show is not specified any of its internal logic regarding time. So anything is kind of possible here.
Everything is canon.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So this is anything that we're saying could be true, I think but
everything we're saying could be wrong.
Yeah, more likely that. Let's go
in one universe, it might be true, in another.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go under the assumption that what's happening in the flashback is in the same timeline. So not what I said, because that makes it a lot simpler. Which is
everything's just one timeline.
Let's keep that assumption that everything happening here is one timeline, yeah. Which I think for the most part the show has stuck to.
So does that mean that Nightfall knew everything that was going to happen? Like she knew that?
Yeah, that would mean that.
Yeah.
But Nightfall, okay, that being said, Nightfall has alluded to hundreds of different timelines. She said she has gone back multiple times, and
so this is the working one. This is the one that is the only one right now, because this is what we're watching.
So
like, she's gone back a bunch of times, but this is
the only one that's relevant. Yeah, exactly. Okay, where Nightfall is from is probably a separate timeline. Yeah. So Nightfall is from a separate timeline. Other than that, everything else is the same.
I could throw a wrench in there and say that, okay, like, so Never mind. You know what? I'm just gonna not do that.
You could throw a wrench, but we've already thrown.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk.
And there's a screwdriver in there too.
Okay. No.
Oh,
let's talk. Yeah. This is so. Lord Commander is created because of the infection from Final Space. He is poisoned by it. This is extremely reminiscent of Voltron Legendary Defender, which is how the villains are created in that show through a thing that's between dimensions. This is very tropey, I think. But he's also beaten up by them. And my question is he acting the way he is because he was beaten up in the past by Gary from the future? Like, doesn't this create a time loop which we cannot escape from?
Well, an important question. Does he see Gary once he wakes up?
I think no. I think he would not see Gary, yeah.
No.
So
he doesn't know that Gary, he doesn't know that. Okay.
Right, I'm not saying he's necessarily like bent on revenge against Gary. He's just he's turned evil because he was.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, he didn't know who Gary was when he.
Yeah, exactly. But he's just so does he look the way he is because he's beaten up and not because he was infected by Final Space?
Yeah, because he got beaten up before he got infected by Final Space.
Yeah, and he looks like now how we know him before.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So this is a case of us creating the villain in our series to a certain extent because he is the villain in. It doesn't make any sense. Because he was the
villain in the present time. You went
and then the only reason he becomes that villain is because we go beating him up in the past. It really makes no sense.
This is why time travel into the past is not possible. Because
it's why this is all just fantasy and doesn't make any sense. But I think the thing that saves it is the infection from Final Space because it's like, okay, this is a tangible thing which is not related to time nonsense, and it's he's poisoned. Bolo does call Final Space a poison, or the Titans are poisoning the universe. So he's gotten the poison from either Final Space is inherently a poison, or it's because of the Titans. I think they're kind of intrinsically linked at this point. And that's what's making him the way he is. We don't really get anything other than his eyes lighting up. Yeah, so
right, and it does loop back to back in episode 3 where he's like coughing up blood at some point. So like, it could also be that it's like physically poisoning Lord Commander at this point, being in this state.
Yeah, that's my interpretation. Is that he has the Titans poison, so that's why he's dying. Basically, the question is why is he acting the way he is? Why is he trying to get to Final Space now? Does he know anything? Does he know that he was poisoned? Does he know that he was beaten up by future Gary?
Like, does he know what Final Space is?
Right. Does he even know about the Titans? And do we know what Final Space is? We know.
So
that
are we
the
just
Titans
assuming it's like some kind of weird instinctual thing that he's like that's what it is?
It's possible.
So in Voltron, basically the thing, and the only reason I'm comparing it to this is because it's an extremely similar situation.
If you bring up Voltron at every possible.
I try not to, but he's the main villains are poisoned by the thing in between dimensions, and that just basically makes them nonsensically evil. Like they don't know anything. It just like corrupts them, their brain. It's like, it corrupts their entire being and makes them just, act that way. And they lose their sense of self, basically. So I think that's my initial interpretation of what's happening with Lord Commander, is that it just infected his brain. And it's not like, he's striving towards Final Space or anything. It's just that's why he's like an evil person now. Doesn't answer the question why he's looking for Final Space though.
Another factor to take in, Mooncake, we all know is the most intelligent creature on this show, had to be told by Bolo, hey, you come from Final Space. And Mooncake's like, whoa. So like,
well, he is Final Space, right?
He is Final Space. So like, Mooncake needed to be informed of this. So either Lord Commander doesn't know, or someone or something informed him at some point.
Well, maybe. Well, the thing is, like, we saw Mooncake, a Mooncake get created when when Gary's dad put that antimatter bomb into the breach. So it could just be like Mooncake was probably just born. He's like, oh, and he didn't know why he was born. So
now we know what happens if you take antimatter and
when
collapse it with matter, it turns into a mooncake.
Yes, let's do it.
Everyone at CERN should be writing this down.
No. You put antimatter into a black hole.
Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah. Let's do that. I just want things. Let's just make mooncakes. That's my goal. Let's just do that.
For science.
for science and also IRL Pokemon, basically, is what's happening. So let's do that. We discovered how to do it. But Mooncake's another important factor because Mooncake is created again through the closing of the initial breach. And we know Lord Commander is bent upon finding Mooncake, and he seems to know something about Mooncake being born. We saw that flashback in episode 4 from Mooncake, Lord Commander attacking, following Mooncake place he was, and it's possible Lord Commander sees Mooncake coming out of the breach and just starts following him from that point on.
Well, see, it's interesting because I do think Lord Commander has said in the past, like, he's the key to final space, and Bolo uses that phrase too. So, like, how does he know that Mooncake is acting as a key?
So Mooncake is, my assumption is that he is the breach, like it's like the contained version of the breach. So I feel like if you could essentially reopen the breach via Mooncake.
Yeah, I think it could just be as simple as Lord Commander sees Mooncake coming out of the final space that infected him, so he knows that they're connected. But that could be why he thinks they're.
Or he might. I mean, my thing that I got from that scene in his infection with final space was that, like, he was privy to kind of like that knowledge, like that it gave him that sort of knowledge of final space and that sort of thing. Whether it's, the connection to final space or the Titans or what have you, assuming they're like the same entity. So it's like, to me, I took that as like, oh, like, so now that's where he got all his knowledge of final space, was because it just sort of like seeped into him from this poison.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think there's reason to believe Lord Commander is aware of what's going on. He uses the same phrase the all-knowing Titan does, although I don't know if they're all-knowing, but he knows Mooncake's key. He thinks final space is going to cure him. Probably we should assume that all of this is correct and that he is just informed because of his final space infection, or maybe he's learned it through research or whatever. It's also possible maybe like a Titan is controlling him because final space went into him. You have to think about things like that.
Oh, I thought about that. I was like, is it possession? Is that it?
Yeah. Eyes lighting up does often denote possession. And if all of final space is just the Titans and they control all of it, and final space leaks into something, then that means the Titans control it. Something else I thought of when you brought up Mooncake being the contained breach is that we're definitely gonna have to throw him into the breach to close it, right? Like,
he's gonna have to super die.
Yeah, that feels like that has to happen now. He came out of the breach closing, so to close another breach, just throw him back in there. That's not good.
Yeah.
I just destroy the universe. I destroy Earth. I'd rather keep Mooncake.
Destroy the show.
Yeah.
Well, the Earth is more bad than Mooncake, so I mean, it's really a win if you think about it.
Yeah, Mooncake is pure. Earth is evil. Just destroy Earth. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Or they're probably gonna do some some sort of like time wibbly wobbly jujitsu, and they'll be able to keep Mooncake alive while still closing the rift. They have to find that bomb though.
Yeah, TBS marketing is not allowing Mooncake to die before the next season. We're keeping.
He is the moneymaker.
Yeah, I think so. I think they can. Maybe we'll get an alternate timeline Mooncake and not our Mooncake.
Oh, but it would be sad. Like, so say like that happens, but like you can create theoretically more Mooncakes by closing breaches, right? Like, what if it's a new Mooncake, but he doesn't know Gary at all?
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, that's so sad.
It's like Ash with a different Pikachu or something.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What if the two Mooncakes meet each other?
Ooh,
clearly the universe won't collapse because both Quins met each other, and
and that was fine.
Okay.
So yeah. Okay, let's we solved the last episode, but what other plot things haven't we talked about here?
Nightfall just walking away. She's gonna
Nightfall
come
leaves,
back, right?
Yeah, that was weird. I thought that was a weird.
Yeah, well, Nightfall has to come back.
She's suddenly okay with all this?
She might have been. Maybe she was just there to make sure everything was going on the right path. Just steer them in the right direction. Then go fix the other 97 billion, 99 or whatever
And
Right.
timeline 996.
Yeah,
Here I come.
the problem is Nightfall does not have her ship that we're aware of, so she can't leave this timeline in theory. But last podcast, I'd speculated that Nightfall was maybe controlling more things than we knew of, and this was all going according to her plan. I feel like I said that or something, that she was like trying to manipulate Gary by acting like she loved him. I think the only support for that is that she just leaves at the end of this, and it's like, okay, something else is happening here with her. I don't think that there's a lot of support for what I was talking about, but it's kind of like, why is she leaving? Like, she's gonna do something, right?
I don't even know if I can say that's out of character because I don't know her enough. It is contrary to the motivations as I know them at the present time.
At the same time, before she made herself revealed, she was always helping, like, from behind or, like, in the shadows or just, like, popping up out of nowhere. So maybe that's just her deal. Like, okay, I did this stuff with the people in person. Now I can go back to my usual modus operandi, just, like, staying back, or when they need me, I'll just pop up, shove them away, and keep my distance.
She's like the Gandalf of the series.
A sexy Gandalf.
Oh, sexy Gandalf.
Yeah, there's a lot of that calling her the hot this episode.
Yeah, the sexy Quinn or the hot Quinn.
Yeah.
No, it's like the young hot Quinn or the older but still equally hot Quinn.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll see what not a lot to speculate on. We'll see what happens with Nightfall. She'll definitely be back. But again, the problem with her going to do the thing she did in the beginning of the series, she doesn't have her ship anymore, a time traveling ship, so I don't know what she's gonna do now. Oh yeah, I guess another thing is that we're going to Earth after this to find the antimatter bomb that is in, New York, they say?
Yeah, to New York, which still exists somehow.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Shout out to Alex for predicting we go to Earth 1 episode late, but we are going to Earth now. And, sure, let's go to Earth. Why not? I doubt we'll be there the whole episode. Maybe we also
Mooncake discovers the Statue of Liberty. My fanfic is coming true.
You wrote a Mooncake Statue of Liberty.
What?
Yeah, Mooncake on Earth has a lot of potential, though. We should do that. I agree.
Mooncake discovers New York style pizza.
Yeah, Mooncake just eating everything. Let's do it.
Mooncake and Tribor go on a Broadway adventure.
Oh yeah, but the reason we need to go back to Earth is we need to get Tribor back in the mix, right? Like, we haven't had Tribor. We've heard that Tribor has this amazing arc. 2 episodes left, no arc yet. So we're meeting Tribor now.
Oh, that was the other thing. I was I was super into Kevin's song.
No, this is Kevin. Like, I feel bad saying this while Michelle is not here, but this is Kevin's worst episode in a while.
I love Kevin.
Yeah, I think Kevin. His only jokes were singing stuff.
I've decided I now love Kevin.
Okay, you're on the Kevin bandwagon, Mel.
Yes, I'm now on the Kevin bandwagon.
It was attempted comic relief that just annoyed.
I loved it, but I also have loved in the past things that have annoyed other people on the show.
Yeah, you like the Kevin singing. For me, the very funny line was Kevin said, Kevin will look after Mooncake because he's so helpful. And they grabs onto Mooncake. I love that.
And then he just Kevin's got the magic. Kevin's got the magic.
Kevin.
I didn't love the magic stuff. Yeah, no, it doesn't ruin it. It's fine. But I loved him volunteering to babysit Mooncake. And
I did love. I think the best line was Bolo, and it helps because it's Keith David saying it. It's like, Mooncake, come with me. Kevin, stop touching stuff.
Yeah,
it was seems so important.
Yeah, well, Keith David sounds important with almost every line he says, though. That's
it's a good
stop touching.
Good choice
stuff.
for Bolo, and Kevin's also taking brain stuff everywhere, and collecting it. Yeah.
Okay, he does say something funny. I was like, "Let's take shots after this."
Yeah, he said,
Jello shots with a brain.
Yeah. There just wasn't a lot of Kevin, but he's still good in what there was. Other big plot thing, Gary and his dad talking in the flashback, and there's the whole thing with them meeting each other, yada yada. They talk about Quinn. We're tracking this Gary Quinn thing, obviously, in this podcast, and Gary says he's seeing 2 people at the same time. It's a time travel thing. Gary's dad's like, got it, been there. Do you love her? Gary says to the Max Core. But I don't think she thinks very much of me. So that's our Gary Quinn development. And Quinn seems sympathetic to Gary in watching this.
Quinn's entire warming up to Gary has been through screens.
It's been through screens. That's true. A good point. Yeah, watching the videos.
Maybe Gary's just better from a distance.
That's
Gary
true.
is very photogenic. Like, he's carrying a TV show all by himself. So, of course, he's going to come off well, like, when you see him through the screen. But what does that matter if in person you can't, like, express yourselves?
Wow, this is a good point. Yeah, well, we'll see what happens when they're face to face again.
I think that maybe this time it's Quinn thinking to herself, maybe she has been a little too hard on him this whole time, because he is actually being useful and actually doing shit that's
which is incorrect. She might be thinking that, but she's wrong to think that. But she might be thinking that.
I mean, if he feels
he's been doing inadvertent things that weren't necessarily useful, they just like inadvertently didn't lead to disaster.
Yeah, but it's like, I mean, she's probably like, she's reacting like if he's feeling that way, then maybe that is a bad thing. It's like, she might be incorrect. It might be incorrect that she's, doesn't think of all that. Like, maybe it's wrong for her to feel that way, but at the same time, it's like, if you're seeing someone think that way about you and you know it, and you know it's wrong, it does sort of hurt a bit.
Yeah, I know. I think it's understandable how she's feeling. I mean, Gary comes across very sympathetically, and she sees that he genuinely does love her, and it's not looking good for my "this is all a subversion." We're tracking that. This is a bad episode, I feel like, for it.
At the same time, though, like that scene where they like just lie down, and Quinn is like, "No, well, let's take a moment." Like I was kind of moved by that, just because even though it's like out of character, I feel for Quinn to just be like, "No, let's just calm down, let's take the moment." But like it felt very sweet, and I felt bad that the show was emotionally manipulating me into believing this.
No, I think Quinn was very sympathetic here. I think her being her like responding to Gary and Gary's dad's emotions, and like treating him nicely, and same thing with Little Kato. Little Kato also responded to that, and then being nice to Gary because of that. I thought that was very emotionally affecting. Yeah. And I think it doesn't. It looks like we're just playing Gary Quinn straight heading into the last two episodes. Although there's been a lot of evidence that we might not be. This episode doesn't contribute to that. I do think it builds on their relationship well. Like, I think it's a good episode for liking the two of them together. If you like that,
agreed.
If that's the thing you like, I do like that they didn't play around with any of the like two Quinns and like dicking around with that, like with like. And I guess, what was it, episode 7, when she had him tied to the bed or whatever, like Quinn bursting in there wasn't about, like they didn't play with the obvious thing that was be like, oh, is Quinn jealous of other Quinn? Like that was never a thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So I was very happy that didn't come up.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think at the same time, we still do Gary calling both Quinns hot, and them being like, it's a time travel thing. And like, I still think it's a little crass and male perspective-y and stuff like that. I still don't think it's great, but it's not terrible.
I mean, it is gonna be male perspective. It's Gary. I mean, that's been his mind from episode 1.
Right. I mean, clearly. I mean, I think all of this is within character for him. I still question why the show is doing that, but yeah, it's we'll see what we're doing in the last episode. It's not a ton to comment on here, but it's worth tracking still. Other stuff that we haven't talked about is we see the sequence of Gary viewing a lot of different Garys, potentially from alternate timelines, including the amazing mustache Gary, and we spend like an entire minute on that.
I like the mini Gary, whatever it was called.
Little micro Gary.
He was
Construction hat Gary makes me think there's like a village people of Garys just somewhere out there.
So did you see the Neo Gary?
Neo Gary, that's
there was
good.
a Neo Gary for 3 hot seconds at the beginning of all the Garys.
Oh, is that the guy who looked like a 70s disco flash mob?
Yeah, he was in a black like trench coat and sunglasses.
Oh, wrong guy. I'm thinking of the guy who looks like he's at like a 70s laser party or something.
There was a straight up Neo Gary.
I actually kind of thought that was a really interesting scene, even though they hung on it long enough, because I'm starting to get the impression that what that was supposed to symbolize was all the different sort of insecurities, hopes, and dreams of Gary throughout the years. Like, each one sort of was represented like either a failing he had, a desire he had, or some phase in his life that he's confronting somehow before he meets his father. I thought, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but
you're not, because they spell it out for you, and they're like,
they have the anxiety thing. Yeah, I mean,
like,
that
part I wasn't a fan of. Like, just like leave it be. Like, you don't really need to like say it that obviously.
I mean, yeah, I like the anxiety thing a little bit. I think that that's not something we've gotten into with Gary a ton, and I thought, like, the visual of it consuming him, it was fine. It connecting
the visual
to
was
different
nice.
timelines.
I really liked him, like, falling into the black tar. That was just, like, interesting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's in line with the whole episode. Visually, definitely great, and you can question a little bit below that, but him seeing all the different Garys, I thought it was another nice visual device. Very, very reminiscent of. Sorry to make references to shows the audience does not know, but Star vs. the Force of Evil.
Yes.
episode Math Magic did this exact same thing with her seeing different alternate versions.
Where
of
was
herself.
the female Gary? Where?
Yeah, that was the obvious doing to do.
I could make the reference to The Last Jedi, but it was all the same Ray.
Oh.
Yeah, there's still a lot of different Rays.
There was a female Gary actually in there. There was one with really long hair.
Could have been long-haired dude Gary, but who knows?
It could have been. It looked feminine though, so
we'll see. We'll look back. But yeah, this is I assume other properties have done this too. But yeah, there's multiple things extremely reminiscent of other shows we cover on this podcast. But I loved
so many shows that do alternate timelines and dimensions.
Yeah, it kind of is a lot of this. That's what I like that stuff. That's why we cover it. So, yeah, I did really like this scene though. And, it was cool seeing all the different Garys. I don't know if we spent too long on Mustache Gary, but I did think it was funny. Other stuff we haven't talked about. Oh, this, Gary piloting into the, in Lightfall into the sun's aperture, and he has to manually navigate into there. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Jargon and words.
Yeah, it was fine. It was a cool sequence. Oh, real thing we didn't talk about. Giant flaming M&M Gatekeeper voiced by Andy Richter. Yeah, he was, I don't remember if we talked about him or not, but, I thought he was great.
Yeah, he was.
He was fine. I liked him smacking people, but like his screechy voice didn't do much for me personally.
I kind of liked it bouncing off Bolo because you had Bolo with this really serious, measure, and they have Andy Richter going, "You guys are late. What are you doing here? Hurry up!" That was real. I like. It was a good sort of nice contrast.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked his voice. They didn't do a ton with him, but the Gatekeeper, yeah. He was cool.
They also do a good visual joke of like while they're going into the final transfer of the chamber, he's just like looking at his watch while everybody's freaking out. I like that.
I like how he was also like really offended when he was called the flaming M&M.
Yeah, why does he know what that is?
Maybe it's a slur. You don't know.
In his world, it's a slur.
Why do they have M&Ms? Like, that's an Earth thing. Anyway, I guess he can see everything, maybe. We were talking about this in earlier podcasts. So the Gatekeeper's like, only Gary can enter. He's chosen. So, we've been talking about is Gary the chosen one. So kind of, I guess he's been chosen to enter this place. I guess that is kind of notable, but yeah, that is what Alex said before. It's he's important in relation to his dad and stuff. I think that's what we're ultimately getting at. The beginning of the episode, Gary's like giving this confident speech about closing the breach, and then we like cut to him panicking in a video on his own. Which I really like this sequence. I think we kind of similar to last episode or a previous one, where, Gary's freaking out in the video and then he's just trying to display confidence. Yeah, I thought that was good.
Also, Hugh just being sassy.
Yeah, Hugh being sassy again. You're still the number one Hugh fanboy after you got on the bandwagon last week. Which bandwagon have you jumped on this week, Alex?
That's
Bolo?
a good question.
Are you the Bolo fanboy?
No, I'm trying to think of a character that actually stood out in this episode.
Not really. Gary's dad, maybe.
Maybe like Gary himself had a strong episode. Like,
I think so.
If we're picking an MVP, I guess it'd be Gary.
Yeah, there's no all the side characters were a little bit diminished. Yeah, here, but
yeah, I do still like the fact that Gary is, even though he is like getting more confident, he still feels the need to put on this really big sort of bravado macho image, and meanwhile he still goes back to his room and just panics.
Yeah, I really like that to start. But yeah, that's what I got here, and next week we are headed to Earth to find Tribor and also the bomb.
Yes.
Tribor, just get Tribor back. Excited.
I love him.
Tribor hype, yeah.
I'm the only one.
Right now, yeah, but I'm ready. I'm ready to jump on this if he's good. We'll see if we do anything with him, but let's do it. Okay, so this chapter 8 is crazy stuff, and let's get final thoughts here, Alex.
We didn't mention the opening segment, which I particularly enjoyed more so than other ones, just because like it is a blatant reference to the pilot, it's like Gary, or like, hey, talk about this in a way that sounds cheerful, like baking cookies. It's like both. We're getting to the point where he is almost dying, so like that makes it even more like sympathetic in a way. But that opening sequence stood out to me in particular. But in general, just the rest of this episode, like it is introducing a lot of stuff, preparing us for the finale. I'm still very excited about this show, even if like the characters in this episode outside of Gary weren't really given much to do. Also, we barely talked about Little Kato because once again, he is a useless character. He's got barely anything to do. Maybe in the final 2 episodes we'll get something, but yeah, like. It's a lot of story that we're handling here, which may end up paying a lot of dividends in this final 2 if we've learned anything from the climaxes of previous episodes. So I'm prepared for the show to throw whatever it wants at me. If it's going to throw at us like 10 other plot points we have no foreshadowing for, I'm here for it.
Like the Titans, yeah. The intro, it made me think, is this, have these intros literally just been the pilot? Because this was so similar, to the pilot. I wonder if this is, how we're connected, because Olin Rogers said the pilot will tie in. Was it just these blank minutes of oxygen left intros all along? I don't know. I don't think it literally ties into what we saw.
It's all a dream.
Because like the pilot was him being on the ship.
Yeah, he's on the ship. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe it's what's after that. But yeah, I love, that's my favorite part of the pilot is the cookie timer. And so they brought it back here. That was good. Mel, final thoughts here.
I mean, I liked it. I think there's a lot to wrap up in the short amount of time that's left, especially with all the conversation here about which timeline and what is a timeline and what is a dimension. Like they really haven't, and they probably didn't ever really intend to define that. Yeah. We're just nitpicky. But I don't know. I'm excited for Tribor. I'm excited for New York. I don't know. I think I don't care about Little Kato, obviously, and Avocado, really. I didn't care much about him either. So that whole being the twist of the series and the turning point, like to me, this 7 and 8 were more of a turning point of things that I wanted to see. So I hope we keep doing that.
Yeah, and I do think it's a reasonable interpretation to say this episode does mark a real turning point for the show, and they just got a lot more out there than the previous ones, even 6 and 7. John, final thoughts.
Hot takes on cold foods, Jello shots.
I don't know if that counts as a food.
Jello's a food.
Jello's a food. Okay.
I only learned in college that there is a way of making Jello with alcohol in it. I thought it was actually impossible. And I also realized that by the time I learned how to make Jello shots, I was too old to have Jello shots. But everything's better when it's lime flavored.
Okay, that's a good. Hot takes on cold foods is a reference to our Steven Universe podcast. Anyway, continue.
Did we have that in the Rick and Morty one too?
Yeah, but they might have not understood it then either. So
it's where we comment on food that appeared in an episode. Okay,
yeah. It's not that hard to explain. But yeah, you like the episode?
I did. Despite all the nitpicks, I liked how this really did move the narrative forward meaningfully, and that makes it a successful episode.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I like this one a lot. I think Olin Rogers had this second overall out of 10 on his episode rankings when he posted his rankings of all the episodes without us having seen half of them. But I don't know if I definitely wouldn't put this above 4. Like I think 4 is a fair amount better than this one.
I think this ranks number like 5 or 6 for me right now. It might get better. I don't know.
Above episode 4 for me. Like I'd probably have it anywhere in the 2 to 5 range overall on my rankings. Those are all kind of similar to me.
I would. It's below 6, below 4. I would put maybe like 2 in there. So yeah, it's like 4th for me.
Can we make up episode titles? This is so hard to keep up.
Yeah, it's really hard to talk about. Yeah, so I don't know, but it's. I guess the disappointment is I thought this one might be an episode that really wows, and I visually wowed, but not narratively for me. So I'm really hoping we get there in one of the last 2 episodes.
I mean, this could very well be like a setup episode. Like, hope maybe this is our last exposition dump, and like from here it's just like action, humor stuff without introducing too much new. Like that would be one way to go about this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. To me, I don't care about introducing the new stuff. That's fine. It's maybe more complex material.
You have to fill. Well, we now have to fill in what's going on with Lord Commander, though. We have the start. We have what he is now. It's like, okay,
probably we have to do that. Yeah, it's possible we don't, but I don't know. There's 2 episodes. I'm skeptical of us talking about everything we want to talk about. There's only 2 episodes left, so we'll see. Also, yeah, I mean, there's hopefully going to be future seasons as well, but, yeah, a lot to cover. We'll see. We'll talk about it in future weeks. Let us know what you thought of our discussion on Chapter 8, YouTube comments or comments at overlyanimated.com. You can also talk with us on our Discord, overlyanimated.com/Discord, or support us via Patreon, patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thank you very much to all of our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Brendan, aka Kells, and thanks as always to our patron executive producers, John, Ryan, Steve, Alex, Andy, and Hugh. We'll be back next week to talk Chapter 9. Check out our other content that's up right now at overlyanimated.com. Not 100% sure it's coming out right now, but other shows, we're talking about them. Thank you guys very much for listening. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.